Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today specializes in working with sophisticated investors, private equity firms, and family offices managing their discretionary capital. And he recently teamed up with Jim Rohn for a new book. Jim Richardson is the managing partner at Stonebridge Capital Consulting. Jim, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Seth. It's great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, really excited to have you on. And for the viewers who haven't met Jim, really great guy. I actually sat beside him at a capital raising event in Toronto. So it was a lot of fun and great to meet you as well.
Yeah, same here, Seth. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's kick things off. Tell us about your real estate goals right now.
Well, our real estate goals are pretty basic, and we like to think about them in the terms of purpose-driven investing. We got into real estate for the sole purpose of making some incremental revenue to help our long-term goal, which was to build, and is still to build, safe and sustainable housing with opportunity employment opportunities for children and adults with autism. So we started investing back in the early 2000s. That's where we got our start in the single family area where most people start with commercial or with real estate investing.
Yeah. And so at what point, because the housing for people with autism is a very unique angle to it, and I've never met anybody else doing it. So how did that come about? What was it, 3 years down the road, you said, hey, this is something I want to take a look at?
Well, it's interesting, Seth, raising a son with autism from the early years, from the first diagnosis when he was 2.5, it always is a series of hurdles and challenges. And for the last, he just turned 25. So up until the point where he graduated high school, that was our primary and really our sole focus was getting him through school. And that was a challenge, and we wrote about that in our book. But once he graduated school, we had another aha moment, which was, okay, so now what? He's 25. We're not young anymore, but we're not certainly old. But we started to think about, well, what are we going to do when we're no longer here? Mm-hmm. Who's going to take care of him? And, it was an awakening, like, we have to figure this out. And, I think as most parents who have or know someone with an autistic son or daughter, there's not a lot of options out there. The state or the government certainly isn't providing anything. So we figured out, well, we need to take this challenge on ourselves and put something in place. So that's kind of where this came from. And what other better way to learn about developing safe and sustainable housing opportunities than to be in the market and be in the space. So that's really what got us into it.
Yeah. And what sort of properties are you targeting? Because I know we had Gene Guarino on, so he's got his take on assisted living. We've got some people doing these huge projects for senior living. What sort of properties do you target?
Well, interesting you bring up Gene's name because I've met with Gene a few times. I spoke with him on Monday, and we're actually going to speak again next week to see if there's synergy between what his business model provides. If you think about Gene's model, and we'll take a step back, he has got this great program, successful program that's been replicated dozens of times to provide residential assisted living for seniors. So I met Gene at a Kyle Wilson, actually it was a Robert Helms syndication event last year in Dallas. Had a chance to speak to Gene, and I said, look, I'm really interested in your program. And what if we took your program and turned it just a little bit on its side? Same program, but just slightly different demographic. And he had a moment of ponder there, and he goes, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
So months have gone by, and I finally was able to reconnect with Gene. And I think there's a great opportunity for us to use that model. Now, what's it going to look like is, I think every state's different. In Pennsylvania, where we live, the state would call them personal care homes. I think every state's going to be a little different. But it's still the same basic principle and concept that Gene is offering. So we're talking to Gene, and whether it is a personal home, that we build out and retrofit, or we think what we'd like to do, Seth, is develop from ground up a very specialized apartment building that has all the things that are going to be appropriate for this type of individual for the rest of their life. Because, previously, most folks and most parents that have children with an intellectual development disability, what they do is they either bounce them around from family member to family member. Years ago, they were, institutions which have, since been closed down, fortunately. So I think there's a great opportunity here. And not only do we get a chance to take care of our son, but I think what we're doing and the vision we have will take care of hopefully hundreds of others across the country by putting a sustainable model out there built on the back of a model that already works. And we know it works because Gene's made it work.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So when you're looking at developing that apartment building, which is really unique, what sort of things, just say, let's say there's a listener out there who doesn't know what goes into developing a property from scratch. What sort of steps do you have to even cover to make that happen?
Well, on top of the typical development responsibilities and things that go along with trying to build an apartment complex, then you've got all of the regulatory issues for each state that have to go into and be built into the plan. For instance, just a couple things. In Pennsylvania, there is a ratio of residents to caretakers. You have to have certain folks that have certain medical requirements. So and you're going to offer, and what we want to offer, Seth, is an end-to-end full service system where not only can these folks live there, they'll eat there, they'll have friends visit there, and we want to build occupational opportunities around that, because the other aspect, other than autism just becoming such a huge complex problem, 80 to 85% of all autistic individuals are either unemployed or underemployed. So what we want to do is, and that's why I think a ground up project is great, because I think we can then build into that property some employment, maybe an employment center, where we work with local firms that need some light packaging or some things that we can put on a first floor or on the back of the building. So have it self-contained. And we think that this will give these folks, these young adults, purpose and to be an active part of the community and feel good about what they're doing, and give them a chance to earn some money, and to hold down a good, steady job.
Yeah. And as you're starting to raise capital for that, are you approaching, service clubs like Rotary who may have some interest?
Well, interestingly, both my wife Nancy and I are active members of the Central Bucks Rotary in Bucks County, PA, and every one of them has just said, we're absolutely committed to help. And there are other organizations, like we have reached out recently. We live right outside of Philadelphia, and being a born and raised Philly kid, naturally I'm a Philadelphia Eagles football fan. Well, the Eagles and their owner, Jeffrey Lurie, have been holding an autism challenge every year. So we're trying to now, with the advent of the book coming out, reach out to organizations like that and say, you know what? We think we'd really like to figure out how we can work together. You've got this mission, we've got this mission. Another organization in our area, big software company called SAP. It's one of the largest application software companies in the world. At one point in our careers, both my wife and I worked there. Well, we know that Bill McDermott, the CEO of SAP, he has a special place in his heart for autism. They actually have a program where they will hire autistic adults to come in and do very specialized work. So the more we start talking about this, the more people want to say, I want to be part of it. Or we think about other organizations that we think would be great folks for us to reach out and align with. So the opportunity here is just unlimited.
Yeah. So what's the next step for you in getting this project to the next step?
Well, interestingly, I was at a family office Club event yesterday in New York City, and we talked to Richard Wilson. We're going to create a fund. So
Oh,
we're going to
nice.
create a fund where we're going to go out, probably a $10 to $15 million fund. It's probably a good starting point for us to get the program underway. But I think, Seth, the other thing we're going to do is we've given serious consideration to creating a nonprofit. And actually on our Facebook page, we've created a place for Michael, placeformichael.org. And we're looking to, and as I talked to Gene, there's a great opportunity to have a nonprofit element to this where people will want to contribute money. And, you know, what we think that will, I think there's many things that'll do, but one that really makes this special is there are a lot of families that we know personally that don't have the financial wherewithal to do what we want to do. And they may not have the financial wherewithal to actually have their son or daughter live at a full-time facility like we're thinking about. So we think this nonprofit could be a great way to supplement and help those families who desperately need help but don't have any other options.
Yeah.
So there's a number of angles to this that we're just thrilled about.
Oh, you've got a lot of exciting stuff going on, so
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
And then, speaking of exciting, you worked with Jim Rohn on the book. So tell us about how all that came about.
Well, the mastermind behind the book is Kyle Wilson, a big Jim Rohn disciple, and actually was Jim's publisher and event manager for years. Last year, as we started to figure out how to learn more about syndicating real estate, syndicating multifamily properties, we realized that the key to success is capital, access to capital, ready access to capital. So I registered for Robert Helm's Secrets of Successful Syndication workshop. It was a 2-day workshop the summer of 2018 in Dallas, went down. And when I registered, I happened to notice that they were offering a VIP luncheon for an additional $40. So I said, sure, why not? Let me see what VIPs I can network with. So I went, was a great event. And the first day luncheon, there was about 40 people in the room, 50 people. And they had a guest speaker, this guy named Kyle Wilson. He spoke, and he talked about some of the things he's doing, the books he's published. And I happened to track him down after that first day, and we were going to a networking reception. And we got to talk, and he said, so tell me your story. I told him what I was doing about raising capital for real estate. He says, no, tell me your story. Why are you here? What is your why that made you take time out to come to Dallas? So a light bulb went on, and I said, well, Kyle, we're here because I think real estate will be a great vehicle to help us fund and develop housing for adults with autism. And he goes, that's an interesting story. Tell me more. Long story short, Seth, we talked, and he says, you ought to think about writing that down and getting your story out in a book. Well, that was just something I hadn't contemplated, but I left that event. Kyle and I stayed in touch, and about 6 months ago, he reaches out to me and says, hey, Jim, I don't know if you remember me, but we met in Dallas at the Robert Helms event, and I'm putting another book together called Desire, Discipline, and Determination. And your story, from what I remember, would fit perfectly in this book. You think you would like to write a chapter for the book? Sure, why not? I said, absolutely. And I'm not realizing that I had never written a chapter in a book before and never really was good at English.
Yeah.
But I took the challenge on. I saw it as an opportunity to get that story out there. Didn't really know the impact it would have, but it was a great opportunity. And over the last few months, been working with Kyle and his publisher. The story started out nothing like what it wound up today in the book. But I think he and his folks really helped us pull out the essence of the things that needed to be in that story. And it has been a blessing, an absolute blessing. I think it's been out 3 weeks now, 24 hours, hit #1 bestseller in 14 categories on Amazon. And the response from the story has been overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you know what, Seth, for me, not that I needed it, but it was somewhat validation of what we're doing, why we're doing it, what drives us, what motivates us. And I think that, in a way, sets us apart from a lot of other folks that might be in this space, because we're not just in it to make a profit. You have to make a profit to be a viable business, but I think it's what we're going to do with our profit that I think is really moving people. And it's just been an absolute blessing.
Yeah. Best $40 you've ever spent.
When you think about it, it could be the turning point in our life and a return on investment that is priceless.
Yeah.
$40 VIP luncheon paved the way to what could be the turning point in making this mission and our vision a reality.
Yeah. Well, that goes to show you in real estate, it's such a people business, and it's all about who you know, who you meet. And, I think that's a great story because it shows you took $40, went to the VIP, met one person, then met another person, and this all ended up in a book.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, Seth, at that same event, the same Robert Helms event in Dallas last year, Gene Garino was a guest speaker. So not only did I meet Kyle and develop this great friendship, and we're part of Kyle's mastermind program. But Gene was there, so I got a chance to talk to Gene again. Yeah. So I keep hammering away at Gene, and I think he finally is seeing that this is a real opportunity here. So I think we're going to try to figure out what synergies we have and how we can leverage his program.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Gene's such a great guy too.
He is.
So, yeah. So let's talk about, out of all the deals that you've done, is there one that stands out as a Keystone deal that made a big impact on you and your business?
Yeah, I think I've thought about that because I knew we were going to touch on this today. And I honestly have to say it was the very first deal we ever did.
Yeah.
It rocked us to our core to go out and buy a property, and it was I think it was a triplex in Philadelphia, and we had never had investment property before, never gone through the process of buying a property and rehabbing it, and then finding tenants and managing tenants. But it opened up our eyes to the greater possibility of leveraging our money, leveraging our time, and then starting to build a sustainable, repeatable business. And I think it was a great starting point for us. It was scary, but I think we started with something that was manageable. Now, I must tell you that as exciting and valuable that first property was, we bought it in like 2003, 2004. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Yeah. So we bought the first three, then we bought a duplex, then we bought a big single family home, trying to build our portfolio out. And then 2007 rolls around. So we got hurt, as most of the country did, as most folks who were invested in housing and in real estate. We took some bumps, and I think it wasn't pleasant at the time, but it made us stronger. It made us more resilient. And the one thing I absolutely know it did, we came out of that on the back end, knowing what not to do going forward was probably as important, if not more important, than knowing what to do, what mistakes to avoid, what things to look out for to protect us, to protect our investors. Because I think there's a great fiduciary responsibility. When you take somebody's money, I believe we need to treat that as if it were our own, and in many ways it is. Yeah. Right? So that experience of buying that first rental property, getting it up, getting it off the ground, getting tenants in there, the tribulations and not sleeping at night, knowing that, geez, first mortgage payment due, and if one tenant doesn't pay their rent, I've got to pay it. Yep. But it all worked out. We lived through that housing crash, came out on the other side better, stronger, more resilient, and I think wiser. But then we realized, Seth, that where we are in our stage of life, single family real estate is not going to get us to where we needed to be, not with the goals we have. So took a step back and said, we need to be in this multifamily space. And it was an experience. And we went through several programs, learning the nuts and bolts of multifamily commercial apartment building. You just add a lot more zeros behind it, right?
Yeah.
It's same basic principle, but the dollars are bigger, the experience is greater. And then, Seth, I think what really rounded it up for us is we knew that we needed more access to capital than what we could put into it to accelerate our plan. If we had started this approach 20 years ago, it would be a different story.
Yeah, I'd be talking to you on your yacht in the Caribbean Ocean. You have two drinks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it has just, I mean, we've taken a methodic approach, learned everything about underwriting apartment buildings, learned about every aspect of property management. And then we took the last 12 months and really dove into the capital side, how to successfully and sustainably raise capital. And that's really what got us with a couple different groups. And, we've found a home, I think, with Richard Wilson and Family Office Club. It's a great place for us to be.
Yeah. And Richard's also another great past guest on the show too. So this is great.
Yeah.
And so how would you say that getting into real estate has changed your life from before, when you just were working your normal job without real estate in there?
Well, I think it's made me more practical. I think it's made me more realistic about investing money. I think until you push yourself and you expand your boundaries and you push outside of your comfort zone, and certainly commercial real estate does that. It absolutely does that to you. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for those without the ability to take a number of body punches and just get back up and keep going. So it's made me stronger. And I think it's given me a lot of wisdom. I've learned so much. And you touched on it earlier. It's a network. This is about relationships. And maybe the one thing that I think has been the biggest benefit is we've met some tremendous people that you would think they would want to keep their secrets and their knowledge to themselves. But I can tell you, Seth, that not a single person has had that scarcity mentality. They want to share, and I think they're paying it forward. And the people that we're meeting and the friendships and the relationships, they're going to help us with our business, sure. But these are friendships. I mean, hanging around with people way smarter than me. And one of my mentors a long time told me, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yep.
And I feel humbled going to these events and having the opportunity to have a conversation like I did with you. By chance, we sat next to each other in Toronto. Yeah. And I it's a blessing. And I think there's just I think our destiny, if I can, is set the moment we put our heart and our mind into, this is what we need to do. This is bigger than us. This is going to be a legacy that we can leave behind and take care of our son and hopefully hundreds of others that are in the same place.
Yeah. Well, looking ahead, let's say 10 years from now, what will your real estate portfolio look like?
Well, in 10 years, you will be interviewing me on a big boat somewhere or on a sandy beach. But I think in 10 years, Seth, I think we'll probably, and it's interesting you asked the question that way, because up until the book was released, I think we had a 3-year plan for building and developing our first property. I think that's now 15 months. It's going to take a lot of work, but what I've seen and the people we've talked to, there's absolutely no reason that we can't compress time. And that's a really good thing. So I think in 10 years, we'll probably have 3 living centers in the eastern seaboard area, Delaware Valley, as I like to call it. It's the greater Philadelphia area, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware. I see us doing some in Southern California. Again, a networking opportunity. Kyle and Gene have introduced us to some folks in Southern California who have the same issue we have. Met a gentleman, talked to him last night, who actually wants to be involved. Actually has talked to Gene, actually has talked to Kyle. The community here, while autism is such a big, broad topic, I think we've got a few people who really see what's possible. So I think three with maybe 50 residents in each one, so 150 in the East Coast, somewhat maybe 3 in the Texas area, Dallas area, 3 in Southern California. So, I can see it's going to take a little while to get this off the ground, but then I think we're going to have a model that can just be accelerated, duplicated, and I think we'll gain traction and, build a brand that will appeal to a lot more people as we perform and show people that we can do this, and we will.
That's great. So, Jim, if somebody's looking to get in touch, pick up a copy of the book, where can they find you?
So easiest way to find us is you can go to our website, which is stonebridgecapitalconsulting.com. It's a mouthful, but it's stonebridgecapitalconsulting.com. They can also reach out to me by email, jim@stonebridgecapitalconsulting.com. They can call our office at area code 267-423-4334, 267-423-4334. Or if you're out on Facebook and you go to find Jim Richardson, you can scroll down, Jim Richardson in Philadelphia, and I have my Stonebridge Capital Consulting brand there. You can find the book. You can buy the book. That would be great because all the proceeds from that book are going to a charity.
Nice.
So, it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Oh, that's great. Well, Jim, just want to say thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your success and your story.
Seth, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and hope to see you again real soon at an event or somewhere along the line.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. And to you, our reviewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate it.